All right, welcome everybody to another episode of the Hit List. You got Steve and Tyrone here.
Yo, yo.
About some of our favorite team stories, specifically for Marvel this week. I'm going to go ahead and get started. Be sure to share, like, subscribe this video, tell all your friends, let them know that we are dropping some good recs. Without further ado, going into my first recommendation.
That's a good one.
Mark Millar and Brian Hitch's Fantastic Four. It was a very short run for him, I think. 12 issues. This was the final story in that run, and it was really about Doctor Doom more than, to me at least, the Fantastic Four. It was essentially answering the question, how in the heck did Doctor Doom get so powerful? And well, he happened to have a master. It's like the Sith. There's two of them. And so the story talks about his master coming back, and Doom is not all too happy about that. He's actually kind of afraid. And he needs the help of the Fantastic Four to take care of his old master. So it's another one of Mark Millar's classics to me. I think it's definitely a hidden gem. I think a lot of people don't really think of him as an FF writer, and he really kills it with this one, because his characterization of Doctor Doom, spot on. And then he's written the Fantastic Four and Ultimate Fantastic Four, so he's got their voices. Couldn't recommend it anymore.
Yeah, I agree. I'm a big FF fan. I've been picking up all those issues and trying to build my complete run of FF, and I would have to say you are spot on. This is a fantastic story, pun included. Again, you've heard me say this before, I am definitely a follower of the story, and I want somebody to entice me with a storyline, and the Fantastic Four did it. Even though I'm a very big Fantastic Four fan, that did it for me. For me, another story that did it for me, and I have to tell you that I was on this bandwagon with issue number 1, is Thunderbolts. I followed the Thunderbolts from beginning to end, even when they started and they did that crazy, huge, amazing Kurt Busiek, Mark Bagley run, which is just amazing. And it went to that crazy Fight Club type thing till coming back to where it is. And I just have to say, they have, every single time, they have made me extremely happy with what they're doing. And they did not drop the ball on this one either. They created such an amazing story with Faith and Monsters, which was by Warren Ellis and Mike Deodato Jr., that this kind of blew me off the table. Again, I started with Thunderbolts in the very beginning, when they were disguising themselves as heroes, and actually they were the masters of evil, and they went through their whole transformation of, we really are the masters of evil, just disguising it, and now we're the good guys. Well, this story takes on a whole different ballgame, where now you have Norman Osborn, and he's leading. One of the things that I absolutely positively like about this is these guys are actually hunting down other powers, and they are like a whole bunch of villains all put together again, trying to hunt down the good guys who are choosing to not follow the rules. And the fight scenes in this story, the in-depth story, of the intricacies of this story really does take you to another level. Learning about penance, who Penance is, and I don't want to surprise it for you because I actually want you to go out and read this. This is one of those stories where you actually learn that Marvel has such a deep cast of characters that nobody uses on a daily basis, that if you put them in the right hands of the right writer, they will make it explode. And I'm not really a Bullseye fan. I think he has way too much power and ability, but I get it. He's got to be the bad guy. This was a perfect story for me because Bullseye gets his ass handed to him. And it was an amazing story. Warren Ellis crafted a fight scene that showed that Bullseye is just what he is. He's a good assassin, he's a good marksman, but when you get someone who is equally talented and well trained just as much, Bullseye can't stand this. He can't stand a chance with him. So Thunderbolts, Faith and Monsters, outstanding story. Right now, Thunderbolts, a very big positive. And again, this is one of those books where I have it in multiple single issues and I have the hardback.
It sounds like, or it's very reminiscent of the Dark Avengers.
Yeah, it was just before all that began to take place. You're absolutely right. Yeah. And I'm telling you, just Mike Deodato's fight scenes, the way he drew Venom and how it all worked out together, just absolutely great. And if you haven't read it, I don't want to spoil it. The fight scene with Bullseye, you will be like, wow, that was really good. I mean, he handled Bullseye like, it was a good fight scene. Very good fight scene.
And yeah, and Deodato did he did Dark Avengers too. So
right,
it looks like there's some good similarities there because that was a good short ongoing too during the Dark Reign.
Right.
And I have that storyline, but I don't have the Thunderbolts one. So I'm going to jump ahead to my hot seat and pick Thunderbolts.
Okay, but I think that's one that would surprise you. It's got everything from great fight scenes to therapy. I mean, it is really good.
Warren Ellis. I mean, we talked about Warren Ellis a little bit before. We need to do a spotlight on Warren Ellis, but I can't. I'm pretty shocked. I don't have this already, or I haven't read it yet. So
yeah. And I read his stuff a lot. He does well, but there's a few misses that he's done. I have picked up some of his misses from his own independent stuff, but this definitely was not one of them. This definitely was a home run.
Yeah, will do. I got to pick it up. Moving on to my next recommendation to you guys. Definitely one that should be on everybody's already back issue collection. Brian Michael Bendis' New Avengers, pretty epic run. He started with Disassembled, took it here to New Avengers, and I think he was writing it for at least 5 years. Had a rotating cast of spectacular artists.
Yeah,
he started with David Finch, who is just, I think it's
phenomenal,
right? Very sharp, very detailed, and this story really kicked off a whole new era for the Avengers.
Yeah,
you could see some of the team members here, but there's a lot of surprises. Who they bring on, who drops off, and this story was really sort of the catalyst for everybody on this team. And Bendis has got that gift of dialogue, putting together some storylines that sort of flow together, and this was just the start of everything. I'd highly recommend not just this story, but the entire run, really. But this to me is where everything changes. Disassembled was before this, and it was sort of his way to get this new team in place. So I get it, but I wasn't really feeling it. This is what really hooked me when I first sort of jumped on with the Avengers and his Avengers, basically.
Yeah, I would agree, man. Now that I look back on this story, I look back and I realize the feeling and emotion that was in this story. And I think this was something that made me think, the Avengers really could be a really good movie. This is that caliber of story for me. The emotion and the feeling in this kind of did that for me.
He really puts together, it doesn't seem eclectic now, but the characters that he put together on the team, you've got Captain America, who's sort of the mainstay, but then you've got other guys that eventually come on the team, like you saw Spider-Woman. You've got Luke Cage, who is very popular in the mainstream right now, but this is where that popularity started.
Yeah,
I will say that
hands down.
Before, he had Luke Cage, he had Power Man and Iron Fist, but that didn't take him up here. When he got brought into the mainstream by Bendis through the years, his popularity took off.
Yeah, I would agree wholeheartedly. So again, I commend you on that one. That was a good one for real.
Thank you.
I'm definitely gonna say I feel like everybody else, right? I feel that Marvel Universe is missing an X-Men story, and I think that Marvel has done really good with space stories, and I know for myself, the first Annihilation was an amazing story. They took it to a whole nother level, and that let me know that Marvel was setting itself apart from DC and even Image and all the other places, because they showed that they had a grasp of space. This next story is hands down a space extravaganza, because they held back nothing and they put forth everything. The rise and fall of the Shi'ar Empire, it takes the cake. Ed Brubaker, Billy Tan. I had known who Billy Tan was because of all his Image stuff, big Billy Tan fan, all the way back to Spirit of the Tao, if you remember that, his first book, one of the early book he did was a brother and sister endowed with these dragons. That artwork got better and better over the years, and it turned into this. And usually anybody that I'm talking to about a really good X-Men story, of course, the Dark Phoenix, those things, but this story stands out. It talks about the third Summers brother coming into the fold, and it was a little bit before this, him wanting to take over, him eventually taking over Lilandra's position. And this was literally a saga from beginning to end. There was love in this story. There was family dialogue. There was father problems. There was mutiny. There was everything you could possibly think of. There were people trying to figure out, yes, he's the leader. Should we follow the leader? Kind of reminiscent of, well, now it is, but kind of reminiscent of when, the Black Panther movie, when you had, Killmonger, the king, and should we follow the king even though his way is kind of crazy, or should we follow T'Challa? But following T'Challa means we're kind of going against the king, and it creates this whole dynamic. And that's what this story did. This story, from beginning to end, from the third Summers brother coming in, taking his place, claiming his heritage, and then eventually becoming literally trying to become king of the galaxy. He just brings the funk to everybody. Corsair, his father, they all get involved. It is just an amazing story. I love the scenes throughout the entire story, all the different planets they go through, the battles in space. It literally just, again, I go on the emotion, and I think this story had a lot of emotion, especially the love part of it. I think that, help me again, the third Summers brother, Gabriel, I felt the whole time he was trying to find where he fits. And he just felt that he is this power and he's got to force himself to fit where he feels he needs to be. And I think that ended up being his downfall. But throughout this entire story, I can't speak highly enough of just the epic scope of this galaxy spanning story. So yeah, this was a good one.
And what did you think? There was a good amount of controversy when they essentially retconned in Gabriel Summers and that whole pre first class team, if you will. What did you think about that controversy?
With Evo, and I'm trying to think of some of the other characters, and they're actually in this story as well. So that group, which was before, I guess you would call them the first class X-Men, there was a group before that failed horribly. I felt that brought a little bit depth. I was really happy that they told a story that added a little bit more back history to Xavier creating the X-Men. It's kind of like creating Captain America and the Captain America, the Truth, right? Red, white, and blue, and the Truth, which was clearly they didn't get Captain America right the first time. They had to test on some Black soldiers to get that formula right, and a lot of people died. And of course, there was one that actually survived, and then we got our Captain America, Steve Rogers. So I always thought, like, well, did he just get it right the first time? Which is kind of how it was built up. So this story gave a little bit of more. It made the history of X-Men not as clean, right?
Yeah.
It made it not as clean. So I actually thought that having that piece come before this and then kicking off the whole Gabriel Summers Rise and Fall of the Shi'ar Empire was a great transition. And I think this is one of the times where Marvel did it really, really well. And there's some times where they don't always hit the mark, or they have this grand idea and it doesn't pan out. This panned out for them.
Yeah, I had no problem with it, actually. And I think, to your point, it did make the backstory and the mythology of the Summers brothers deeper. So it made sense with the first Captain America you were talking about,
Isaiah Washington.
Yeah, that to me, he was not, that was not a retcon to me, in so much as, well, I guess they're both sort of dirty secrets,
right?
Ugly truths, if you will,
right?
Especially the first Captain America.
Yeah,
because there's it's not something that you have to share, particularly when you've got Captain America, who
right.
He's this like shining beacon to
right.
Americans,
right?
But I think it was a good story. They're both good stories.
Right.
I didn't have any issue with either of them, but I know that there were fans that kind of thought it went a little bit too far. Again, I think it worked out. Brubaker, we just know he can write a good space story now too.
Yeah, so, absolutely.
Add that to the list of genres that he can cover.
He can do very well. Exactly.
Right. So moving on to my third. So we'll stick with X-Men, and my X-Men story, a little bit more grounded, a little bit more of the harkening back to the classics, if you will.
Yeah.
Joss Whedon, John Cassaday's Astonishing X-Men, particularly the penultimate story in his run. He did 24 issues. This was the third of four sort of arcs that he put together, and out of all of them, I enjoyed this arc the most. The first one, he's sort of changing up what Grant Morrison just did with New X-Men, making it a little more fun, like making it a little bit more, like I said, harkening back to Claremont's lengthy run. But the other arcs, they all sort of nicely flow together. But for me, this one was my favorite because you got a blend of Joss Whedon sort of paying homage to some classic X-Men stories, and then adding his own twist with bringing in Agent Brand and
Yeah.
the new villain Ord, and then also you got Kitty Pryde and sort of the classic X-Men team, you know, fighting against Cassandra Nova, who you know she's on the more modern side of villains, right?
You're right.
All of that mixed together, and then Joss Whedon, he does just great dialogue, very
Yeah.
nice and pithy. He can do a lot with a little, and then of course you've got Cassidy on art, where he's just, you know, he's got this clean look, and
Stellar. Yep.
he knows, yeah, he draws expressions so well, and you need that with Whedon, with his dialogue being a little bit on the shorter, terser side to a degree, and it's just such a great blend. And this story to me, yeah, it puts the best of the entire run together.
Yeah. I actually really like those stories that give me a good blast to the past. Like, I wasn't collecting comic books silver age, golden age, and I picked up a little here and there, but I've read some of those collected editions, and those stories were really good. And I think that reading some of those stories helps me build the base. But I think when creators are able to take that nostalgia and mix it in with some current stuff and still keep it a really, really good comic book story, it's just it does something. It really adds to the notion that comic books can kind of touch you on any level and really tell some great in-depth stories. The next story for me is a Fantastic Four book. I'm big on Fantastic Four. It's a family book. I'm big on family. I think that the way the Fantastic Four house deals with its storytelling, always with that underlining of family, the love story between Reed and Sue, the intelligence of Reed is always there, but I think the one thing that kind of grounds him has always been the love of Sue and the love of his family. And so for me, having two daughters, that and you one daughter, that love of family made this story really easy. So the birth of Valeria Richards for me stands out. It stands out because not only did they have to bring in your worst enemy, you now have to pay homage and bow down and respect that person actually helped keep your family together, which for me kind of took Doom a little bit out of the picture of, well, he's not really that bad if he actually birthed this child, right? For me, it kind of put it into the perspective of, well, maybe he's not as bad as we all thought he was. But then again, after the story, he kind of brings it back. But this for me gave me a little sense of, I kind of know who he is. I kind of know a little bit more about Doom, and I don't think he is as bad as he is. Very much so misguided, but has this ultimate plan that if he could just get his plans in place, just maybe he might be a pretty good leader. But then you're like, nah, he's just going to screw everything up again. So that is what this story did for me. Having Doom come in and to help using his intelligence and his power and all of the other sorcery things that he used in his tech to help Sue give birth. And in doing so, he gets to name the child. And in naming the child, we now have Valeria, and we find out who Valeria is later on down the line in those Doom in more Fantastic Four stories, specifically Doom and his past stories, or his story about his past life with the whole gypsies and traveling gypsies and all those things, and when he falls in love and all that stuff. So this story really, this was Carl Kessel and Mark Bagley, another really good story by this team. And, these guys have been doing and worked on Fantastic Four for years, and they've worked on other stuff together. This was a really good story. It's one of those things that really, it touched me, because it's like, well, dang, it made me contemplate, like, is Doom really that bad? Like, he literally could have taken advantage of this entire situation, right? He could have gone in, did something crazy, implanted something crazy, blew something up, literally he could have done something as completely crazy, but what he did was he did the right thing. And I think for me, that kind of gave me a little bit more understanding of Doom as the character. So The Birth of Valeria Richards is a really good, it's volume 3, number 54, 55, 56. Very good story, and it just shows you another side of Doom. It's one of those stories that make you want to root for the bad guy.
Doom he's got to be in the top 2 or 3 of most popular villains.
Yeah. He's got layers and layers to him, to where he keeps, from reading all of the stories, where he keeps expanding who he is as a character. And the writers kind of key into that. And I don't know if, and right, the writers are creating these stories, but part of me feels that these characters begin to take on a life of their own. Like, what would Doom actually do? Right. Well, I was thinking Doom would actually do something else. But because Doom is an actual doctor, he was actually trained to be a doctor, to be this intelligent philosopher. For the most part, he's still going to try to do the right thing. And that's what this story does. It's like, well, no, he's going to do the right thing. He's not going to do he's not going to do the evil thing you think he is. He's going to do the right thing, and then compound it with some evil that's going to come up a little bit later.
He is in that vein, like Magneto, where it's a little bit of that misunderstood anti-hero.
Right.
He sort of means well, but also he's doing some other stuff on the side.
He's doing some other stuff on the side. And
that makes him a villain.
Right. And if you want more of Doom and Valeria and their whole relationship, it comes up later as well, where Valeria has to go back to Uncle Doom and say, uh-oh, Daddy broke the negative zone, so you got to go help fix it. And that is another great story, but we'll move on.
That is a great segue into my number 4. We didn't plan this, folks.
This was not planned, man. This is all natural.
Yeah,
all organic.
So I picked Hickman's last story of his amazing Fantastic Four run. He just knows how to intermingle every little thing, every nuance. And this story was called Forever, and it was issue 600 to 605. It wrapped everything up very well, and just like Cool Tie, I like stories about family too, and that's what makes. I mean, everybody knows that's what makes the Fantastic Four
right.
Fantastic Four. It's that they are superheroes, but they're also a family. So they're sort of the prototype there when it comes to really the stakes being that much higher, because they live together. You've got a family now with the team. You've got 2 little kids. So I picked this one because you've got a mix of that great sort of adventure, outer space aspect. You've got Galactus coming back. You've got the Celestials. You've got, and then you've got, on the other hand, sort of some of the quieter moments with Reed and his son and daughter, and then Sue. And really the question, it's really a philosophical question for Reed, is he doing enough? Is he doing everything? And this story answers why he is. And it's tough to summarize everything.
Right.
But the way Hickman does it, he's got a really strong grasp of tying everything together, having somewhat complicated or not complex sort of storylines flowing together. But then this showed another side to me, where he's talking about, again, those quieter moments with your family and taking care of your kids, things that are not very superhero-y, if you will.
Right.
It's like more of the day-to-day and mundane.
Yeah.
But it does really tie back to family, particularly around Reed and his family when he was a boy too. So
right.
You've got that, which you don't really think about that when you think of the Fantastic Four. You do think about how to defeat Galactus, how to save the Earth, how to save the galaxy.
Right. Exactly.
So, yeah, he puts all of that in here, and he just ends it so well. I mean, it gets pretty emotional. So yeah, can't recommend it enough.
One of the things I like about comic books, I think everybody likes about comic books, are those nice slug down, beat down fights. And I think this next story really embodies what a really good comic book story actually is. It is Avengers Red Zone. We have the Red Skull, again, a good villain. Not one of the top villains. I think the Uncanny Avengers gave him a little bit more power, wanting to dominate the United States, which is the first part to dominating the planet. And written by Jeff Johns, and Olivier Coipel also. This was one of those really good, pure comic book stories. It is about a cloud of toxin being let out from Mount Rushmore that's infecting the neighboring communities. I mean, it is a very good Roy Thomas, Kirby, all of those writers from Silver and Golden Age. It is just a really good, pure comic book story. The gas begins to affect the local communities. There is all kinds of crazy things going on. You have the She-Hulk being infected. You have Iron Man and the Black Panther. They're trying to figure out their relationship in this story. And one of the actual really good scenes is this really outstanding fight scene that takes place between the Black Panther and the Red Skull. And the fight scene by itself tells a great deal. I mean, these guys did not hold back any of their anger. They did not hold back any of their words and violence. Jeff Johns wrote it from an evil Red Skull fighting a black guy, and Black Panther came back at him 100% as, I'm going to beat you as that black guy, so be prepared. So this was just a great comic book story in every sense of the word. If you want to read a fun, it moves really quickly. The panels are really good. The story is not difficult to follow. You really get the gist of, these are the Avengers and this is what they can do. This was not a superstar major hit, but it was a solid story. And it carried the Avengers on. For me, again, it was one of those books where it made me want to keep reading the book. It was not a jump off point. It was one of those things, well, wow, if this is what the story was and this is what they did, well, let's see what's going to happen next. It was in America. Oftentimes Avengers stories can jump to outer space. This one was in America. It hit home. It made sense. It was a really solid story.
And this was a very, very short run.
Yeah.
For Geoff Johns. I think he jumped to DC right after this run on Avengers that he did. And the run, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, guys, in the comments, but maybe 6 issues. So very interesting. Great story. Great story. Definitely up there for one of my honorable mentions. Red Skull's he's like the perennial evil bad guy that you love to hate.
Right.
I mean, a Nazi that looks crazy.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised none of the Trump supporters are wearing that shirt, a picture of him around and Trump on the top of it. So I mean, but yeah, he is one of those guys where his relevance is becoming very relevant again, based on all the crazy crap that's going on right now.
Yeah, and he's really, I mean, he does have Captain America's body, so he does have some powers, but really his at the core, other than being evil and being a Nazi, is his intellect, which is really interesting, right? Because you don't really have a lot of other villains that you would, at least in my mind, consider pure evil, but really, really intelligent about it.
Right.
Like, this is a great story, for example, right? I mean, he is, folks, we're going to give away the whole story. He's pretending to be somebody else, so you don't know he's a Red Skull, and he's unleashed this deadly gas.
Right.
It's an intricate plan that he's got, and he's obviously trying to hurt a lot of people, and then also have this ability to sort of keep a low profile to a degree. So it's just a strange combination, because most of you've got villains that are anti-heroes, like we talked about before, Doctor Doom and Magneto. So you could sort of empathize and root for them. Then you've got some really straight up, you can't sympathize for them. Hope they get beat down by the Black Panther, kind of like Red Skull. But Red Skull also has that intellect where they can insert him in there for the in the Marvel universe, at least, for having the really bad plans, right?
Right. He's going to bring the pure evil.
Right.
Yeah, there's no debating. He's going to bring the pure evil, and he's going to take out whoever he has to take out in order to reach his plan. And that's his own men, other Nazis, other white people who he made deals with. He's going to take them out so that he gets what he wants in the end, which will always be his downfall.
Right.
And I want to go back on something, because we talked about, you hinted on something. Guys, Steve and I don't actually share these stories with each other. We don't actually say what stories we're reading. So when these things are bouncing back off of each other, and he's sharing the FF and I'm sharing the FF and I'm leading into it, this is pure coincidental. So I don't want you guys to think that we're all planning this. We have a topic, and then we run for the topic, and we keep it pretty much a secret until the show starts.
And I didn't tell him to say that remark about Trump either.
Right. But that's all doesn't mean that he's a Trump supporter. Let's be clear about that.
Moving along.
Kind
of like the Avengers, but not. Ultimates. First story, Superhuman. Mark Miller again. Brian Hitch. And these guys, I mean, this story was just, I mean, it just blew me away when it
yeah, absolutely.
It was really nothing like the stories that were getting written and produced at the time. It felt so real, but not. you've got, you know, you've got Sam Jackson basically as Nick Fury, who now is, everybody knows that, but
Yeah. No
here,
one remembers David Hasselhoff.
yeah, exactly. But here it was like, why is Nick Fury black?
Right.
Right? Where, he's bald, still got the eye patch, but something else is a little different. And then you've got the Avengers, but not really the Avengers,
Right.
is their personalities, the way they interact. There is some subtle hints of their personality from the original Marvel 616, but
Right.
very different. And again, felt like it was grounded in reality, sort of the way Miller handled the story. And then you got Brian Hitch just doing amazing cinematic, look. It looked like he was, drawing just one of those, epic movies, like a Michael Bay movie, if you will.
Right. Exactly.
And,
That's a good analogy. Right.
yeah, and it felt very much like the world was much bigger, and the storyline, it was just the beginning. Like there was way more in store. He's just sort of showing us the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
And the run was 2 separate 12-issue runs, and I just read that when he went back and did Ultimate Avengers later, he actually wanted to do this Ultimates run longer. He wanted it to be like 60 issues, and I can't even imagine if he could have done those stories back then, because there was a gap in between when he did this story and then when he did his next run, and it was, I think it was a similar team. There was a different cast, but it was written in the same vein. But I think it would have turned out differently if he did those runs back to back.
Right.
This is the story that started it all. You got Captain America, he's more soldier here than patriot. I think a lot of people think of him as more of patriot and wanting to fight for the country in a certain way, like a Boy Scout, from that regard. Iron Man, who probably the most similar to his 616 counterpart,
Yeah.
but just way over the top, way over the top. And back to my point about Nick Fury, and now everybody knows Nick Fury from the MCU as being Sam Jackson. Here I'm sure they took inspiration from this Iron Man as opposed to the 616 Iron Man when they were thinking about the behavior and how Robert Downey Jr. is going to be Tony Stark and Iron Man, because he is more like this Iron Man in Ultimates. And then rounding out the big three, Thor, he's nothing like the 616.
Yeah, nothing.
Yeah. He basically comes off as a crazy person.
Yeah.
But it all makes sense.
Yeah.
Everything makes sense. And Miller just had a great take on reimagining the Avengers, if you will. And he just has a knack for that. And it's like blockbuster in your face. This is gonna blow your socks, but it's going to be in limited supply. So when this came out, this was my Ultimate line book, between this Ultimate Spider-Man and Ultimate X-Men. So
when you read this story, you really can understand that the Avengers story, the first Avengers story with Thor and Loki in the woods fighting Iron Man and Captain America hitting the shield, they got their inspiration from this run.
Yes, there is a lot of inspiration, and I
Yeah,
don't think people realize that
right.
from watching the movies. Which,
This literally could be key issues. These could literally be key issues. The Shatari, the way they fought, the big spaceships that came. This literally could be major key issues to that first Avengers story.
oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. And I'm curious if, and I haven't checked, I'm curious if those books from this first Ultimate story went up in value because a lot of inspiration came from this run, which went into that first Avengers movie. I didn't even think about
That would be interesting.
that. Yeah.
My gut says no because the books themselves, they're not in that like really aged time frame yet. Maybe maybe in another 20 years, maybe, and then also you got to think of the print run too. If the print run was high, which I'm guessing it was, because Miller was already a relatively household name as far as
Yeah.
comics go, and this was their big Ultimates book. It wasn't the flagship book. I think
Right.
Spider-Man was the flagship book,
Yeah.
but this
Agreed.
book was it was different from the other two. It was that reimagining, but I think um, you know, the way it was brought to people was just different, and it was again more of a limited run, and so it just felt more special.
I'm gonna hope that since I have so many copies of it, I'm gonna hope they jump up in value.
I'm with you on there. I'm with you there, buddy.
I'm gonna hope that since I have so many copies of it, I'm gonna hope they jump up in value.
I'm with you on there. I'm with you there, buddy.
I'm gonna go back to shoot. I guess this book came out when I was in college, man. So I'm gonna go back a ways, and I think this is when I really first got into comics. When I first got into comics, my cousin brought me some Milestone comics and some X Force comics, and we would read his X Force and X Factor comics. And he brought some Milestone, and I think for me, the Milestone thing really, really hit home. And I think that's the books that I began to read a lot. However, when Marvel decided to make Xavier an evil, crazy person and give birth to Onslaught, it was one of those things where I was okay with spending the money to get every single tie-in, spin-off, 3-issue. I got everything. I just felt that this was the time to learn about the X-Men, and I think this gave a really, really great understanding of X-Men. And I'm always really happy when there's a power up, and I've always been an Iceman fan. Bobby has always been that loose cannon for me. When he was able to use his powers to detect someone who was not there, I was like, now I get it. Then another memorable moment from this story was when Jean Grey helped Banner and the Hulk with the problem, which just created an even bigger problem. I can go on. I can, tell you the whole part of, you know, forcing Doom to help become a part of the solution, and how they all sacrifice themselves. And again, this is another like Avengers in Red Zone. This was another purely great comic book story. Like some of the stories, like it's clear to see that the Ultimates was a good real life story. It had real life feel. I would say I wouldn't classify it as a comic book story, right? This is a purely powerful comic book story. It is a slugfest. It is learning on the fly. It is we're in it deep, and how do we deal with it? It is no matter what we do at every turn, we are getting the beat down until we all bring it together. And that's why I consider this to be a team book, because the team actually comes together to create a solution to the problem. And I'm trying to explain it so I don't give it away, even though I know most of our viewers out there have probably already read Onslaught, but I'm sure that there are some out there who haven't. So very fun story, very fast paced, brings in a whole lot of different aspects of the Marvel universe, brings in a lot of characters who ended up having good parts. Joe Madureira, artist, drew some amazing, amazing splash pages, especially one of the final splash pages that kind of ended the whole arc. I love the scene where the Falcon, he's going in to lend a hand, and he's, you know, wings straight up. He's straight. He's got the muscles bulging. That was a very powerful panel for me. So Onslaught, man, I would love to see a really good animation of Onslaught. And when I say good animation, I'm talking about on the level of, I like, what's the Batman story? The Batman when he's in feudal Japan.
Oh, the anime one that just came out.
Yes, that story and the fight scenes that came up in Young Justice, one of the last issues where they were fighting in the cave. Great animation. I would love to see an Onslaught show, an Onslaught animated movie that they just don't hold back at all. The fighting scenes, the beat down just propels the story. And that's, I think, what happened. I think here's this huge issue and we got to punch our way to get through it in the end. And that's exactly what they did. And at every turn, Onslaught met them with equal or greater force until he was just outgunned in the end and outmatched. But you got to see how it all ends. And if you haven't read Onslaught, this is one of those great issues where you can, you know, pick it up, read it, and enjoy it. Just a really good, pure comic book story.
Yeah, the Onslaught story, very nostalgic for me. That was around the time I started, even before collecting books on a regular basis. I actually had the original trade paperbacks when they first came out. That was one of the first collected stories that I was buying. Little out of the box there for team stories, but we'll allow it this one time.
Yeah, it is, but you know, because of how the story ended and because of how the whole thing wrapped up, it actually, for me, it actually does become a team book. It is a team book of all the Marvel universe.
Collectively, it takes a team to beat Onslaught.
Right. You could have done it by way of, you know, the Fantastic Four. You could have done it by way of the the view of the X-Men. You could have done it the view of the Avengers. You could have done it the view of Doom. And I think there's a lot of different aspects you could have taken it from. I really want to see a really good X-Men movie. And I think they have a great deal of information and knowledge and history to pull from the X-Men. And I'm going to say it, man, I think Onslaught could be a really, really good on-scene villain. If the way they did Thanos, Onslaught could be, I think, written well, the right artist, the right actor to play it. Oof, gosh, that would just be us. Oh, that would be good.
I like your idea more of the animated version, actually.
Yeah.
Especially, I can't believe you didn't bring up the X-Men animated series.
Well, yeah, the X-Men animated series was great. Believe me, that was a really good story. The fight scenes in that were really good as well. The stories were well written. I agree with you. But
adding in Onslaught to the animated series, I think that would have made a great. That could have taken up the whole season. That could have brought in new characters. That could have brought in the Avengers, even if it was a short stint. But you know, like you were saying, I think animated would have been great too, especially in that style and that sort of Jim Lee homage style.
Yeah, I wouldn't even. But I guess you would say the Jim Lee homage style. I'm still going. Joe Mad his even back in his Image days, man, he just had a way of creating the panels and the splash pages. And
Oh, I take nothing away from Joe Mad.
This was brilliant. This was brilliant. This was brilliant on every level.
Joe Mad to me is similar to J. Scott Campbell. It's kind of those guys that the ones that got away, if you will. They
Yeah,
still have a huge fan base, but they don't really do a lot as far as ongoings go. So
yeah,
you sort of get them in spurts. You know,
right.
I know J. Scott Campbell's very active. You know, still does a lot of covers, a lot of variants.
All the Disney stuff.
Yeah, but not a lot insofar as one full story.
Right. Same thing with Joe Mad. He's got, he's into the whole video gaming thing. So that's where all his time is spent right now.
Right, and yeah, I take nothing away from Joe Mad with what I was saying about the animated series, but that animated series, I mean, that I think that really pulled in a lot of kids at the time,
Yeah.
especially me and my friends
Yeah.
at that age. You know, we didn't have the money really to go out and buy comics every week, but we could watch this show every week
Yeah.
on TV for free, and
Yeah.
you got the
For
story
free.
right there.
Yeah. No streaming.
Yeah, exactly. So wrapping it up, guys.
Yeah.
My hot seat. I already said it earlier on. Warren Ellis's Thunderbolts. I still can't believe I don't have that. I got to pick that up.
For me, it would also be your Hickman FF, the ending of that run. That was very memorable. And it's one of those issues where I can sit back and read things over and over again, but it's also a storyline that I'm okay with buying that book over and over. I know that sounds kind of crazy, but if I see that book, I'm going to buy it. Like if I see one of those issues, I'm like, oh, I got to hold on to this book. I got to get a whole set together so I can give it to somebody, or, give it to one of my younger cousins or nephews so they can read it, which is what I used to do a lot. When my nephews were younger, I would get them runs of books and send it to them as there was holiday gifts or birthday gifts or just, gifts for the end of the school year or whatever. That Hickman FF story, got to give it up. He masterfully wrote that story.
All right, folks. That's it for our show today. Hope you guys got some good recs. Keep the mind thinking what to read next. Let us know though, what are some of your favorite Marvel Team book stories? You can do those big crossovers too. We'll
allow it.
But, yeah, don't forget to like, share, subscribe. We'll be back again. Yeah. All right, everyone. Take it easy.
Peace out.